Good morning, everybody. We're now going to begin today's webinar entitled How to Run Your Own Event or Meeting Online Effectively. Apologies for the slight delay in starting. We're just waiting for the rest of the attendees to be available. So the first thing I'd like to do is just introduce you to the people that you're going to see and hear from today. I'm Roisin Cahill, Operations Director at ITForce. Most of you will be aware of ITForce. We're an award-winning managed services company based here in Dublin. We pride ourselves on the quality of our service, and if you'd like to seek further information about us, you'll find that on our website regarding the services we provide and our awards on www.itforce.ie. Michael Coyle, you see on the left of your screen there, he's a technical enablement specialist and he works at Micro Warehouse. And Micro Warehouse are the largest Irish-owned IT distributor in the country, and they provide software, hardware, printers, and accessories. And finally, Mark Skelton on the top right-hand side of your screen will address you, and Mark is our Chief Technical Officer here at ITForce. So we just go on to the agenda now, and the first part I'm going to do the talking through the first few slides and topics, and then I'm going to hand you over to Michael, and he's going to do a live demo. And then Mark will talk about the environment that you need to run online meetings securely. So just regarding housekeeping, this webinar should run for approximately 30 minutes. If you have any questions, please drop them into the questions pane that you'll see on the right-hand side of your page. And we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end. The webinar is being recorded and we will distribute a copy to all attendees, so please feel free to share this with your colleagues in your company. Just 2 points to note. Today we're going to be running a couple of polls during the webinar, and you'll see a little question box will appear, and you can select your answer that you think is most appropriate, and we'll send those answers to you along with the webinar afterwards. And also we're going to be showing a couple of videos. So you might just want to adjust the sound or what you can see on the screen when we show the videos. So let's get started. More and more people are working from home at the moment, and they're trying to have meetings or go about their normal business while at home. And this can obviously have its challenges. There are lots of clips on the internet showing fails of meeting fails. So whether people are using Zoom or Teams or whichever technology they're using. And you may have seen some of these already, but I'm just going to show you one very quick clip here of things that can go wrong.
Goodbye. All right. Talk to you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
See you guys.
Tony!
Can you hear us?
Tony!
Oh no. Don't. Jen, call him. Oh my gosh. Hold on, I'm gonna text a couple pictures of that. Oh. Oh. Oh boy.
What's up?
Tony, I can see you in here.
We can all see you.
Now, so people might kind of ask, what did Tony do wrong there? Well, some people might say that Tony forgot to be dressed appropriately while doing his meeting, but actually what he forgot to do was to hang up at the end of the call. So that's one thing that is important to remember while doing it. And I'm going to go into some more tips later. But the next slide I want to just talk through is the difference between a webinar or an online meeting. So before we get into this, we're just going to do a very quick poll to see how often that you guys are running online events. So a little screen is going to appear now, and if you can click your answer and press submit, that would be great. Okay, just a couple more seconds now. So over the past couple of months, clients have been asking us how to set up online meetings and how to set up webinars. And in fact, what is the difference between meetings and webinars? And so just to give you our view of that, an online meeting is a collaboration among a relatively small group of people. So it's generally internal as opposed to external, and most people tend to speak, so it's quite interactive when you do an online meeting. A webinar, on the other hand, is a presentation to a larger group, and it's more one way, so the presenter does the majority of the speaking. And there may also be opportunities for audience participation in a webinar, but those features tend to be used more strategically. The presenter tends to share their information that they have on their screen, and they allow questions at the end. So that's effectively the difference between an online meeting and a webinar. I want to move on now and just show another clip, just a little bit on etiquette for meetings. So obviously you need to dress appropriately when doing a meeting, as we saw from the last clip. But this little clip here, it just shows how we're all working from home. It's not your normal setup. There will be kids, there will be noise, and we'll just have a quick look at the clip.
And this meditation is great for bringing about a sense of relaxation, well-being and calm. So starting just quickly by breathing in and breathing out. And it's really challenging, I know, with children home from school and working from home, but just trying to just keep all of those distractions out of the way.
Okay, so another tip there, I suppose, is it's always best to mute yourself unless you want to speak. If you're using Teams, you can also blur the background, which would be very helpful in that instance because obviously the child in the background wouldn't be visible. But let's not forget, at the moment in the kind of environment that we're all working in, we're kind of mostly forced to working from home, whether it's our choice or not, and it's not a fully professional environment, so everybody's just doing their best. So maybe just to have some allowances for that. So the next thing I want to just discuss is what kind of online meeting is right for your needs. So I suppose depending on your agenda, you may choose to have an audio only meeting or a video meeting. So just to talk about the two of those and what kind of meetings they would be best for. So audio only meetings, standalone audio meetings, they're perfect for quick kind of touch-based sessions where you don't need to use Wi-Fi, you don't need to share your video or share any screens or anything like that. So you might just want to discuss a few items or share a piece of company news or let the team know about a change in protocol, but they're quite straightforward and simple. A couple of tips for that: make a note of who attends the meeting because that will help serve as a future record that the meeting happened, or in case you need to do any follow-ups afterwards. Video meetings, adding video to your online meetings can be very valuable if the meeting if it involves a smaller or a more dispersed group or a virtual face-to-face with a client. So video meetings will help to build better rapport and trust among participants, and also strengthens communication by reducing the chance of misread nuances or tone. So sometimes when you can't see people, you're not 100% sure whether what they said is what they meant to say, and that can be helped with when using video. With regards to productivity and online audio only or video meetings, personally, I choose video. The reason for this, you probably have seen yourself when you're in meetings that sometimes people don't always concentrate fully or give the meeting their full attention when you're on audio alone. So obviously people can't see you. So if you think of any webinars that you're joining, you're on mute, and you could be typing away or you can be working on something else at the same time if you think that the current little section isn't that important to you or isn't that relevant to you. So you can't do that with video, or it's harder to do that with video because people can see you. So if you get up to go off and make a cup of tea, they know you're not there at the video. So I find that video meetings tend to be shorter because there's less repeating to do, and people tend to be more engaged. If you have to do audio only, you might consider adding in a couple of video clips or polls just to keep it interesting. So just a little bit about the technology for online webinars. Clients have asked us what they should be using. Most ITForce clients have Microsoft Teams, and the Teams software can be used to run both webinars and online meetings, so it's quite flexible. Michael's going to do a demo of these for you in a few minutes. Another alternative that people are using, mostly due to the current COVID and coronavirus, GoToWebinar, and that includes a few extra features, for example, polls. And Zoom is the other popular option at the moment, but there are some security concerns around Zoom, and Mark will go into that a little bit later when he's talking about security. So I just want to run through just one last slide before handing you over to Michael for the demos. And this last slide is just to cover a few tips. So things to consider. So before you do the meeting, it's important to use a good quality mic and headset, and if at all possible, hardwire. So Wi-Fi can be a little bit less reliable, so if you can plug the Ethernet cable into the back of your laptop or whatever computer you're using, all the better. Audio is important because of missed communications and people not hearing and constant repeating, so it is important to have a good quality mic. Before the meeting, test your setup beforehand. So don't assume it'll work, particularly important if you have a number of presenters. It is difficult at the moment, and people aren't all 100% professional at this, so everybody's trying their best. On one recent webinar that I attended, the guys didn't actually get it together with their presenters. They're obviously in different locations, but they couldn't get each being able to speak to each other and the right screen to show until more than 10 minutes beforehand, and everybody was waiting in the lobby to join, so it didn't look the best. Just on today's meeting, we have 3 different locations. So I'm in the office, the rest of our presenters are at home, and the person that's managing the webinar is actually in a 4th location at home. So I mean, it can be done, it's just it takes a bit of practice, and we did a few practice sessions before today's meeting. So also in advance, just check that your audio is working. Important to put any other notifications or distractions on mute. So what I mean here is, for instance, while in the office here, we have 3CX running as our phone system, but we also have Microsoft Teams, and we also have email. So it wouldn't be uncommon for me that I'm on a Teams call with an internal colleague and an external call will come in on 3CX. So one call interrupts the other call and you get multiple ringings. So that can be quite off-putting, particularly if you're trying to run a webinar. So it's best to put your status on Do Not Disturb in Teams and close your Outlook completely. And same for other things that you may have running, like WhatsApp or Messenger or other notifications. Next tip, do the virtual meeting as closely as you would in format as if it was a physical meeting. So for instance, things like setting an agenda in advance, sharing with others so as they can be prepared for your meeting, prepare the content in advance and structure it so that the meeting flows. Be prepared to share your screen if you need to, any vital information that needs to be shared, or reports or metrics or anything else. Use a slideshow to highlight points, but again, don't read directly from it. So much the same as if you were doing a presentation in your office in a physical manner. Keep an eye on your new co-workers, as I like to call them, the cats, the dogs, the kids at home while we're all working from home. So try to avoid distractions or interruptions that might derail the flow of the meeting. If you have Teams, you can blur the background, which really is great. At the end of the meeting, encourage participation via an open mic. You can have a discussion that way, or a more structured Q&A if you're running a webinar. And finally, and importantly, just like Tony forgot to do at the start, remember to hang up at the end of the meeting. So that's just a few tips for you. I hope you find those useful. I'm going to pass you over to Michael now to do the demos. You there, Michael?
Hi, Roshan. Hope you can hear me okay.
I can hear you perfectly, yeah.
Brilliant, okay. I still can't, I promise I'm not going to stand up here on my demo and that, but I still can't stop laughing in some of those videos. Okay, so what I'm going to go through here is show how to create a new meeting. Now, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can go into Outlook and do it through Outlook. So you open up Outlook and you see the new Teams meeting in here. A lot of people will use this, but what I'm going to show today is into Teams, okay? So this is my calendar. It looks at my calendar in Outlook, and it takes a representation of that. So to create a new meeting, I go up here. I have a little drop down arrow. I've got two options here. I can schedule a meeting and I've got live events as well. That's where maybe, for example, I am looking at a larger meeting of 250 plus people. But for this one here, I'm just going to schedule a meeting. Okay, so I'm going to give it a title. So I'm going to call this here demo demo IT. Okay, so just call it demo IT. So who am I going to invite onto this here? I'm going to invite, say, Steve Arnott. I'm going to invite Tony Gates as well. So what time? I'm going to just leave this at 12:30 to 1 o'clock. I can make this a recurring one as well. So if I want to have this daily, weekly, monthly, I can do that as well. Now, this is the other option on here, the channel. So for example, if I am using Teams, and these are the list of teams I have, I can actually put the meeting into a channel so everybody can see it. So for example, I mightn't want to invite anybody, but I just might put the information into a channel. So for example, on here, I might actually look at theme park, and I might look at, like, say, for example, IT, okay? So that's where this is going to appear. So then I just click on send, and the meeting will populate then into my calendar, okay? Now that can take, like, say, 30 seconds or so just to appear in that as well. So just when we're waiting for that to appear, I'm gonna click on this other meeting up here. So just click on the join. So this was a previous meeting. So you get this pre-join screen to start off with in that as well. So I am turning off, like, say, the video on start in that as well. So if also, say for example, if I wanted to turn this on and I wanted to go into background blur, I could actually have the background blur on here as well, and I can actually put in, for example, like, say, you know, one of these predefined backgrounds. But I'm just going to turn off the video just for this purpose, because well, my video is already showing. So click on join now, and this will bring me into the actual meeting, okay? So what I can see here is that there's nobody else has joined the meeting so far, and that, like, you know, so and again, you know, depending on how many people you invite and that as well. So now I can see Steve Arnott has actually joined the meeting in that, okay? Now, a few other things I want to show on this here as well is around just simple things, features. So what you can have on here is, if I want to record the meeting to start off with, so I click on record, this privacy will appear for everybody straight away, okay? If people are not comfortable with that, then they can actually turn this here, you know, they can remove themselves from the actual meeting as well. A few other things here as well regarding captions. So I can go into here, turn on live captions, and what will actually appear down at the very bottom is the captions in real time. So hopefully everybody can see that, and it's actually pretty good. You know, if it picks up my accent, it can pick up most accents as well. So I'm just going to turn that off as well. But some of the key features here are around presenting. So I might want to present my desktop. I might want to present a PowerPoint slide. So I might just go and put in this here, Office 365 tips, not there, like, you know, so, and again, you know, that'll come up on that there, so I can move through the slides and that as well, like, you know, so other things I can do as well, I can chat in through the meeting as well. So for example, here, we could have a chat conversation going on through the meeting as well. Other things in here, so say for example somebody hasn't joined, I can click on that as well and invite somebody into it. So say for example, if I could see somebody's presence, that they were in green, I can see that they're at their computer, and I can just click over here and ask them to join. Now the reason it's giving me these suggestions is because they're part of that team, that channel that we put this into, and that as well. I can also, if I have audio conferencing, I can dial in a number as well. And to move across the slides, I can just go across here, just move from slide to slide and that as well. There's another little thing here as well that a lot of people like, is this here, prevent participants from moving through the shared presentation on their own. So when I'm presenting, I have control over, because I am the organizer, okay? But other people can actually move through the slides. Now, they're not moving my desktop, but they're moving the slide. So I can just turn that off so that each people, like everybody will see the slide that I have and that as well, like, you know. So that's just some of the, you know, the simple features within a meeting and that as well. There is other things as well regarding, like, say, meeting notes. You can take meeting notes and that also as well. Okay, so I'm just going to close this here out now. So it's leaving the meeting. So once it goes, leaves the meeting, what I really like about Teams here now as well is that the actual recording is, it uses a technology called Stream in the back end, okay? Because I selected to record the actual meeting, the recording will actually appear here in that as well, like, you know. So again, just a nice feature to have within the recording in that as well, like, you know. So you see here, recording has stopped, saving recording to Microsoft Stream and that can take about, say, 2 or 3 minutes in that as well for the recording. Now, if it is a larger meeting, it can take a lot longer. So if you're on for about an hour, you know, the actual recording can take, you know, a little bit longer in that as well. Okay, that's just a whistle-stop tour of setting up a meeting. I'm going to transfer you now across to Mark. Mark, I'm just going to pass across to you. Can you hear me okay, Mark?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me there, Michael?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. I better turn on my camera. I have it turned off. There I am. Okay, so hi, my name is Mark Skelton. I'm the Chief Technology Officer, the head techie basically for ITForce, and I'm going to talk primarily about security concerns. It's a very big topic, but I'm just going to really touch on some sort of key points. As Roshan mentioned earlier, just questions box there. So if at any stage, if you want to ask questions, please do pop them in, and we'll do our best to answer them towards the end. I think we're just going to have a very quick poll question about as to what particular technologies people are using at the moment. Hopefully we'll get a little poll. So I'm just going to give you maybe 20-30 seconds to fill that in. And please, if you can, just answer. It's nice to know. Okay, we'll just give it another couple of seconds. Okay, I think we probably have enough there, so we might just see those results hopefully in a second. I'm glad to see lots of people are using Teams, which is good. Some Zoom there, obviously, and some people none of the above. Okay, so we'll go back to our slides and we'll go back to talking a little bit about security. Let me just wait for the slide. Thanks, and thanks to Kieran as well, who's our man behind the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain doing all the slides for us. So I'm going to focus in on the two big players at the moment is around Zoom and Teams. Those seem to be the ones that most people are using. I'm going to engage in a kind of what's now the national sport and doing a little bit of Zoom bashing. And it's supposed us to highlight a point. Zoom has you know, a very good product in some ways and has uses, but it's important to be aware of some of its limitations. One of the things I would say about Zoom is really its origins are around as a consumer product, a kind of a freebie, or, you know, not really targeted at the corporate or business environment. And that's part of the reason I think that it didn't have a great focus on security, and it has a very checkered history. I mean, you don't have to, it comes up a lot on the news, particularly lately now because of the focus on it. I also have particular concerns, you know, around data privacy and GDPR. I mean, for example, it is a fully US hosted, so if you do video recording, it'll be hosted in the US. Now they do have GDPR statement and all that, but I'm not convinced, you know, if it's not hosted in the EU, I don't think it can be truly considered to be GDPR compliant. Teams on the other side obviously was built, you know, from the get-go as a corporate or business solution. If you currently have Office 365, for me, it's an obvious choice. You already have it, comes with almost every plan. If you have a plan that doesn't have it, you can actually, for the moment, turn on a 6-month free trial of it for obvious reasons. At the current environment, Microsoft have done that. It provides then just a seamless operation with your existing. So if you're using Office 365, you've got your email, maybe SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. Teams is just another solution within that. The same username, all the same security settings. Hopefully you're using password protection like multi-factor authentication, things like conditional access, data loss prevention, advanced threat protection. There's a whole slew of very advanced Microsoft security and compliance features. And if you're using Teams, you're basically leveraging all of those, and it gives you a single solution. If you use a third-party solution, even a very good one, it's a separate, you've got a different logon, different password, different policies. So definitely Teams is one to consider. It also is, pretty much GDPR compliant out of the box. If you spin up your Office 365 tenant, as it's called, it's going to be in what's called the EU data centers. It's fully GDPR compliant. We might just look at the next slide. There's a lot of permissions settings focusing in on Teams. Far too many to go through in this slide, and I'm going to touch on that topic a little bit in the next slide. But here's just one example of if you want to do a live event. So a live event is really more a webinar where you have a large, target audience who are listening, much like what we're doing now. By default, people don't have the option to do that. So you have to actually give people the permissions. This is people within your organization. And again, very typically, you don't allow that permission to everybody. So it's not one size fits all. You can have a group or a small group of people who are permitted to start live events within Teams. Maybe your marketing manager or a couple of senior managers, but you mightn't want to allow everybody within your organization to do that. And if we just move on to the next slide, then I'm going to look at just a few quick hints and tips, which are very general, really about anything got to do with an online meeting or a webinar. So the first point I think has been touched on a few times already is to avoid consumer grade products, software, or plans. Now that includes everything, not just Zoom. Even Microsoft have consumer grade versions, freebie versions, Office.com. They're perfectly good for personal use, but they don't have the same SLA. They don't have the same data security in particular, and that would be my biggest concern. So absolutely get a paid version of it in a software plan, and be aware of what the SLA is, what the security policies are around. Now, whatever platform you're using, and that includes Teams, is you do need to look at configuring it. It's not typically, Teams is quite solid out of the box as it happens, but there are settings that you may want to have a think about. And I've highlighted their policies. You as an organization should have policies about this and should know what they are. So you have to inform yourself. Now, I would maybe advise, if you're not sure, to engage, and we have been asking our customers to engage with us, that we would go in and we could discuss these with you and basically configure the platform as appropriate. And as I say, typically you don't have the same policy for everybody. You might have certain privileged users that are allowed. A good example might be you may want to allow screen sharing with third parties, but only a few privileged users, or you may want to lock down. You may want to allow screen sharing, but only with certain organizations like partners or IT providers. Most of them have the option to use a waiting room feature. It's what's called the lobby in Teams. So when you join the meeting as a participant, you don't, external participant, I'm thinking in particular, you don't just immediately jump into the meeting where you might be. There's a thing called Zoom bombing, for instance, where people can just jump in on top of your meeting without you realizing it. So it just means you're not caught unawares, maybe talking about something, and then the next minute there's a third party that has joined your meeting. Password protection is very important now. This isn't just for Zoom or for Office 365. It really should be using it now. One of the nice things with Teams, it's the same password that you use, you know, both to log onto your machine, to get into Office 365. So I would, at the minimum, would strongly recommend having multi-factor authentication enabled. Keep your software up to date. For Microsoft customers, if you're using Teams, I mean, we ITForce will be patching your corporate systems and keeping all your Microsoft software up to date. But, you know, if it's a home machine, maybe it's not included in our patch policy, maybe it's a tablet. If you're using Zoom or another product, GoToWebinar, just make sure, particularly lately, there's been a lot of updates to Zoom and GoToWebinar, just various security issues have been plugged. So make sure and use the latest versions. Please do educate your employees. So make sure, and again, you need to know what you're educating them about. That goes back to my second point, really about having policies. You know, the senior management really should know what your policies are. They should be written, and you should educate your employees. You know, give them a little bit of training. Again, that's something that we're more than happy to help you guys with. The final point I have there is really around data leakage. And I have seen and heard of instances like this, not just people showing their underpants or whatever, but a little bit more dangerous is the ability to leak data when you're doing an online presentation. That can be a number of things. It could simply be the physical environment. I mean, hopefully there's nothing too damning or horrible behind me, but you can imagine I was in the office and I had somehow a customer document lying around in the background, or something on the wall, maybe internal to ITForce. It shouldn't really be shared externally. So declutter your environment and make sure that there's nothing in any way sensitive lying around in case it accidentally gets shared. I mean, it may sound, you don't know who's recording, who's doing screen grabbing, you know, something that may not be that visible could in theory. So why run the risk? Just get rid of it. Don't have it in shot. Don't have it around in general. The other one then is to be careful what you actually show. So if you share the screen, so at the moment, for instance, we're sharing a PowerPoint slides with you, and the best way to be careful there is to declutter or sanitize your actual desktop, your computer environment. Close out Outlook, close out, don't have 47 spreadsheets and 9 versions of Word, or close out everything that isn't relevant to the meeting. That way, well, number one, it's a lot easier to organize yourself and know what you're doing, but it's also, you're far less likely to accidentally share. I mean, I've done it myself where I've shared the wrong spreadsheet, but these were internal meetings where I'm dealing with my colleagues. It didn't matter, but if that had been an internal, I'm mentioning about the Boris element. That was, the British Prime Minister who managed to share the Zoom ID of all members of the British cabinet, which was just an astonishing faux pas. But anyways, I won't give out about him too much. The poor man nearly died. That's probably it for now. Those were the main points I wanted to make about security. There is a lot more to it, and that is, I would recommend to engage with ITForce to help you set up what your own configuration and what your policies should be. So maybe we might, I think, jump back to Roisin, and we're going to go into our Q&A. You're there, Roisin, are you?
I'm here, Mark. Thank you very much for that.
Excellent. That's good. I'm glad to hear.
Okay, so we might just go through a number of questions. If Michael's there, you come back on the, yeah, great. Thanks, Michael. So we have a couple of questions, and please feel free to send more in if you have them. I'm conscious of time also, so we'll go through a few of them anyway. The first one maybe for yourself, Michael. Is Polypoll Builder for Teams a good tool for polls in meetings?
Yes, it is. It's the most common one used, Roisin, in that, and it's really easy to set up. It doesn't cost anything, and it really brings in an interesting part about Teams, about third-party applications. Okay, there's a really important thing, and Mark talked about security as well. So we're getting a lot of people now using third-party applications within a team. So for example, Asana is one for project management. So they might have it, they might integrate it into a team in that as well. Just understand one big thing about Teams is you really need it secure set up at the very start in that, because regarding third-party applications, understand where the data gets saved and stored in that as well. And that's why it's very important, to speak to the team within ITForce, because there's a lot of security features that you can turn on at the very start.
Yeah, I'd agree with that point, Michael. We do see sometimes if you just turn it on, which has happened, people have been forced, you know, through no fault of their own into a situation. They just have to turn things on. They just have to get using. But it's a lot easier if we can get in early, get those security settings right. It's much more difficult to retrofit. If people have gone in and kind of done the damage, as it were, it's much more difficult to fix it after.
Yeah, the interesting thing, Mark, like if you look at it, like a lot of people, the most common question we got was around remote working. Now, I didn't demo it today, but audio conferencing, giving people the option to join a meeting through a phone number, so they can ring a number and join in that as well. But the goal really was to get people remote working. You know, now it's just a case of going in and just making sure the policies are tight in that as well. And I think that's just, you know, time really well spent on securing.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Is there a way to prevent one person in the meeting from entering chat to the meeting?
Okay, so just seeing this question from Neil. So Neil, is the question here, you want to keep chat going, but you want to disable it for one person? Because my understanding is that is not possible. You can turn off chat. So there is meeting policies, like there's a lot of things like Mark touched on about, like, you know, people can join into the lobby before you join in as well, like, you know, but you can turn off chat, you can turn it on, you know, for certain users, but it's not, doesn't get granular where if I set up a meeting and say, for example, I want to chat with Mark and Roshan, but I do not want Kieran to have that feature. That feature, my understanding, is not available because it's all or nothing within the meeting.
Okay, the next question, is there a time limit on recording your webinar with Teams, or is it unlimited?
So good question here, because I think the question really is coming up from Owen here is about live events. So live events, you've got 4 hours. So we briefly touched on live events where it can only last up to 4 hours. Online meetings, yeah, we've done day meetings on that, so there's no limitation on that.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions. I'm not seeing any more questions on here, which is fine. You must have answered them all during the presentation, so fair play. Okay, so I might just close up the meeting then, just with a thanks to Kieran, who is our marketeer, who set everything up for us in the background and is pulling all the strings there. Thanks to Michael and thanks to Mark and to everybody for attending. I hope you found it useful and informative, and that it's given you a few pointers and a few things to consider. So to conclude, you will receive a mail with a copy of the webinar and the answers to the polls, and please feel free to share this with your colleagues. And if you think of any further questions after we've completed the webinar, you can also send them on to us. Just reply to the mail that will come out from Kieran. We will, of course, send out communications regarding next webinars, but if you have any requests or there's any areas that you would like further information on by way of a webinar, please feel free to send those in to us as well. But for today, thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.